There we go. And the names of the attendees will go in our minutes of this meeting, and that will be posted on our website sometime after the meeting. So, greetings to everyone. I'm Steve Cohen. I'm a senior staff counsel with the California Law Revision Commission. The commission has been tasked by the legislature with a particular study, and everyone has been briefed on what this study is about. We are charged with finding the best replacement terms for two terms that are currently used throughout the codes in California: dependent person and dependent adult. These terms are used to refer to, in many different circumstances, people with disabilities as well as other groups of people that are potentially in need of some assistance of some kind. And so we have also been charged or asked to convene this working group to assist in this study. And this is our second meeting. For those of you who were not able to attend the first meeting, thank you all very, very much for attending. Unfortunately, we only have an hour because we were trying to do our best to maximize the number of people who would be able to spare some time to come to this meeting. So I will go over sort of a procedure for how we think would be the best way to go around and get everyone's opinion. Please try to be as concise as you can so that everyone has a chance to speak. In fact, for those of you who weren't at the first meeting, we're going to do a procedure which was what we did at that first meeting again. I'll have a little introduction, a little bit more, and then we'll basically go around the table, so to speak, and I will just ask everyone for whatever suggestion they have about replacement terms. I'm hoping that everyone has received material that was sent out to you via email. There was meeting material for the first meeting, which was then attached to another email, which was sent to everyone. And the email also had additional information. And particularly important in the email was I had prepared kind of a chart down near the bottom of the email in which I had offered some suggested replacement terms. It's not mandatory by any means, but it was something sort of prompts to help us perhaps. And it was based on things that we had talked about at the first meeting, as well as some analysis that we've done here at the commission. So hopefully everyone has that and can find that chart. Let me go over a couple other things here. I guess first, I will just ask anybody who is kind of really struggling to understand what we're doing here, or just has some question that they think they need an answer to before they're able to contribute. You go ahead and raise your hand, and maybe I can try and answer that question, because after we do that.
Steve, would you mind before we get too far into this to remind folks about the camera requirements?
Yes. So, so one of the requirements of Bagley-Keene, this is an open meeting, is that if we're doing the meeting, instead of doing it in person, we're doing it through a video conference. The participants are supposed to remain on camera, like visible on camera. The statute has a lot of different aspects to it. If someone has a problem, because for whatever reason they're not able to appear on video, then I'm sure that's going to be fine. But otherwise, if you don't mind, it would be better for you to be on video, just so that we're technically compliant with Bagley-Keene. Okay, so thank you. That was Sarah Huckle, by the way. In the background, we have Sarah Huckle, our deputy director, and also Sharon Riley, our executive director, are in the boxes that are labeled CLRC, CRPC, and they're helping with the meeting. So does anybody here is there anybody who feels that they have a question that they really, not about substituting terms, but more about sort of what we're even doing here? Like you're just kind of in the dark about what's going on. Okay, that's excellent. Oh, Bobby, yes.
I just have a quick logistical question. This is our second meeting, and can you give me a approximate idea? How many more meetings? What are we doing?
Sure.
What's the objective of this meeting? What's the
So all the meetings are, the objective of all the meetings is to come to sort of achieve some near consensus from the working group as to substitute terms. And as soon as we're able to get there, that will be all the meetings we will need. I have some hope that maybe this will be the last meeting because, you know, obviously we had 20 some people at the first meeting. We have less here. We're kind of beating a drum here, and I don't know how much progress we're making. It might be that we will end up recommending to the commission, this is the best the working group can come up with, and this is also what the staff is recommending, and then the commission will have to talk about it. And I will tell everyone here, I didn't mention this at the first meeting, but and I will tell everyone again, you are all certainly welcome to participate in the discussions the commission has when they take up this study. The commission meets every 2-3 months, and this item will be on the agenda. And you're welcome to offer comment at any time because the commission will also be discussing this and they will have questions. And again, you might feel like you had a great suggestion that wasn't passed on to the commission and you want to speak out at a public meeting and say, you know, I really think this would be a good substitute term and here's why, or this is a bad substitute term and you shouldn't use that. So, okay. Is that helpful? Okay, so what I would like to do, this is what we did at the first meeting, assuming everyone has received the materials and they understand what we're looking for here, which is we're just trying to get near consensus on what would be the best replacement terms for the two terms dependent person and dependent adult. By the way, those two, the replacement term should be something involving the word person and something involving the word adult so that they fit in where they are now. We're not allowed to change existing laws, so we have to be very narrow in terms of what we do. And that's what's made this task a little bit difficult. So what I'd like to do is just go around the Zoom room, so to speak, here, and ask each person, first, is there any term that they sort of think is the best out of what they've thought about, out of what's been suggested, et cetera? You're not required to offer anything. You might say, you know what, I'm still not sure, whatever. But if you do have a term that you like, very briefly explain why. And the other thing is that if someone else has offered a term, a suggestion before you, and you think that's a bad idea, then please offer why you think that other term would be a bad idea. And we'll go around once. You can see everybody's here. There's not that many people. I'd like to ask everybody to take no more than about a minute in this first round. And then we'll do it a second time because that way everyone will have a chance to comment on what everyone else said. Okay.
Steve, this is Sharon. Sorry to interrupt you. And maybe you already said it, but I think it would be helpful if when we're going around the room, people state their name and organization.
Yes. Thank you. I left that out of my little spiel and I very much appreciate that. We do have, some of you have your names posted there, but it would be great to just tell us if you are part of an organization. That would be excellent. And obviously you don't need to be part of an organization, but if you are, that would be great. And just say your name just in case there's some confusion on the screen. And again, thank you all very much for this participation. One last thing, I will actually, you know what, I guess I'll just do this. Maybe I'll just do this first because I had indicated to people who couldn't be at this meeting that if they wanted to offer their input via email, that to send it to me and I would tell the group. And I got one such email. And so I will just pretend that this person, Tony Anderson, he's from ARCANET and he was not able to be at the meeting. But in summary, he says, I agree the terms are all clunky, which is what I said in my email. But after reviewing these several times, I think person/adult with support needs or care needs gets closest for me. He also likes person with disability support service needs. So that's just one person's view, and he's not here to explain it further, but so that's there. Okay, so actually, Sarah, if you could you call on, would you mind calling on people here? Because I'm seeing that the order seems to be changing, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep track of who's spoken and who hasn't. Christy, I see you have a hand up. So is that a question or are you?
No, I was just seeing if I can go because I have the opportunity to be on
Oh.
camera and go right now.
Excellent. Good.
Is that okay?
Yes, good thinking. That's
Okay.
if anybody
Okay.
needs to leave, that's a way to promote yourselves. You can get by raising your hand, you get to the front of the line. If you have to leave, you
Okay.
can't stay the whole time. So, okay,
Very good.
Christy, why don't you go ahead then?
Okay, so I'm Christy Sepulveda Burchett from Educate Advocate. And I agree with Tony that his email, person or adult with support needs. Now, the reason that I was toying between that one and the eligibility one that you had listed in your email, the thing that turns me off from that one, just to let you know, is it's almost like we've predetermined whether or not a person is eligible. And I don't think we should get to that point in the description. So that's why I'm really leaning towards person or adult with support needs. So that was what I wanted to bring to the table as my and our organization's choice for replacement term. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Christy.
And
Okay.
It looks like Nicole Adler has her hand up.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. I'm Nicole Adler. I am a member of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, appointed by Jerry Brown and Gavin Newsom. I am currently conserved since 18 years of age, and I am in the process of learning about supported decision making as an alternative. As a reminder, I am Nicole First, a person, and I belong to many communities. Words matter. And I prefer a person, adult with a support need.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Nicole.
You're welcome.
And unless anyone else raises their hand, I'll just go in the order I have written down on a sheet. So the next would be Nina.
Did you say Nina?
Oh.
Yes, please.
Is that okay? Nina Spielman. I'm with Disability Voices United, and like Nicole and probably Tony, in staring at these, I think person adult with a support need is probably the best term for given this ask here. So I that's my vote.
Thank you very much.
Regina Brink.
Hi, Regina. Thank you for being here.
Okay, hopefully I can be seen.
Yes.
Okay. I also favor person/adult with support needs. I think because we don't want to redefine terms that are already in there. That's the closest I can come to something that would be person first, but also capture the most people in this category.
Excellent. Thank you. So before calling on someone else, thank you very much, Regina. There seems to be a trend here. So I want to make a couple comments because it was my anticipation that this would be one of the most popular choices. And as the first, I think I think Christy mentioned this, probably the second choice might have been person with support eligibility. And so I have two questions that I'd ask people to address going forward, if they like either of those terms. Support need seems simpler. The only concern I had about this was something that had been expressed at the previous meeting to some extent, which is that some people who would be in this category may think or feel, I don't have any need. Like I'm okay. I'm independent. I don't need anything right now. I might in the future. And so I was trying to look for a word. I thought eligibility was awkward, but I was trying to look for a way to say, you know, I toyed with like support qualified or something that said, this person doesn't necessarily need anything now, but is, you know, if they did, they would be someone that could use this support. The other question, if people like support need, is I've heard people say need or needs. And please focus on whether you need the plural or you prefer the singular. Is there, if there's, you know, if you feel strongly one way or another about that. Okay.
I forgot to say I'm from the California Council of the Blind, by the way.
Thank you, Regina.
Sorry. And as to those questions, I think there's a trick where you can do need and then parentheses with an S. And that's kind of, I know it's like, but it does cover a lot of things and it's grammatically correct. And I've seen it in legislation because you can have one support need or many needs. And so I think we need to account for that. I think we could also take care of some of your concerns in the definition because everything has to have a definition. And I think that would help to clarify that it doesn't have to be an immediate need, but it could be a potential need.
Excellent point. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. Okay, I think we're good for the next person, Sarah.
Vivian. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anyone's name. Please feel free to correct.
Hi, I'm Vivian Mbaku. I'm the Director of Equity and Elder Justice at Justice and Aging, and I'm at our Los Angeles office. Unfortunately, I wasn't unable to attend the first meeting, but I'm excited to be here with you guys today. I agree with everyone else. I think after looking through, I find person/adult with a support need to be the least clunky of a clunkier list. I do think that this issue of like whether or not something in the future is going to come up, I mean, potentially maybe adding at risk, like person with a support need or at risk of having a support need, or something like that might help fill in that gap. But I really do like just person/adult with a support need because I think it's the most simple, but also actually addresses the criteria that we're looking for without leaving some gaps. Like I think person/adult at risk just leaves, when I read it, I think at risk of what? Like it leaves it as if there's something that needs to be asked. Same with like vulnerability to what? But support need, at least to me when I read it, I think, okay, that's open-ended in a way that you can think of the various things, but you're not thinking, oh, there's one specific thing that's missing from this phrase. And I wasn't on the first meeting, but I did have like a quick question about what the definitions would look like when we create this. Would we be able to also provide like examples of what a support need might be, like not, you know, not like limited, but just like examples of what that would be so that people have a better understanding of what we're meaning by this phrase?
So here, so this is, I guess, is appropriate to go into this a little bit here. We are pretty restricted in the assignment from the legislature. We were told that we may not, in making our recommendation, we may not recommend substantively changing existing law in any way. That phrase is a little vague. It's something the commission has heard many times, though, from the legislature. And we will have to discuss this with the commission. So, for example, Regina's suggestion was about how you could address the issue of need or potential need in the definition. That's a great idea, except we're not really authorized to change the definition of these terms. Right now, these terms, dependent adult and dependent person, are already defined. And so a very strict reading of don't make a substantive change to existing law would be, you got to keep those same definitions. Just stick in this new term for the term dependent adult or dependent person. And that's the only thing that we're going to do here, because then people start fighting over the definition. And now pretty soon you have a whole different bill. So that will be a little tricky. But maybe we'll suggest that. Maybe the commission will still suggest that to the legislature in our recommendation. But we're not going to be able to do a lot. That's for sure. So I guess have that in mind. Okay. Thank you, Vivian. Thanks for coming today too. Okay, Sarah.
Greg DeGier.
Hi, I'm Greg DeGier. I'm with the ARC of California. We were the sponsors of the bill that led to all this. First, I wanted to thank the staff for the great analysis and roadmap that you gave us. I think I finally have started to grasp the complexity of this. My initial thought was go through each term, each definition, all 100 and whatever it is, sections, and try to, for each one, come up with a term to replace the existing term that best reflects the content of the current definition. And my thought in each case was to come up with a term that neither is too broad or too narrow for than what the current definition of is. I'm listening though to comments so far. I think it might actually be possible to come up with one or two terms that would would make it unnecessary to go through it by section and having different terms for different sections. I just think that whatever term or terms we come up with should be things that don't lead anybody looking at it for the first time to think they understand it without having read the definition.
Right. In other words, somewhat vague enough so that you don't just assume you know what the term means, that you
Yes.
need to basically find the definition of this term.
Yes, that's something that's neither so narrow that it leaves out something that intuitive leaves out something in the definition, or so broad that it includes the things that are not in the definition. I think the terms that people have suggested so far, I think sound pretty good. I'd like to hear what others have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Greg. Okay, Sarah.
Bobby Dutta.
Yeah, this is Bobby Dutta, and I'm with SDAC, or Statewide Disability Advisory Council. And my 2 cents in all of this is going to be person/adult with functional limitations.
Okay. And can you offer, is there a reason that you, and this is not like a popularity contest, but is there a reason you think that the term that people have been talking about so far, person, adult with a support need or with support needs, why that's a problem, why that would not be a good substitution?
Well, I work with a lot of folks, and oftentimes when people are asking for any kind of accommodation, one question that always come up, especially within the state civil service, that's where I belong, is that, what are your functional limitations? That's the classic definition of disability. And from that perspective, we don't have to explain much when we say functional limitation. It's automatically assumed there is some limiting factor necessitating the need for whatever that you need to be accommodated. So that's my thinking.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Bobby. Appreciate it. Sarah?
Carmen Ruiz Ochoa.
Morning, Carmen Ruiz Ochoa with the Department of Developmental Services, and hearing everyone's input and reading the content that was shared. really resonating with a person with support needs, as Regina stated. Mhm.
Thanks very much. Excellent. Okay, next.
Jacqueline Flores.
Morning, everybody. My name's Jacqueline. I'm with California Advocates for Nursing Home Reform, Kenner. I'm filling in for Tony Chicotel. I think I agree with the suggestion on person/adult with support needs. I think, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, that seems to be the best suggestion so far.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you for coming. And Carmen, thank you for coming too. All right, Sarah.
James Tregiani.
Morning, James Trajari. I'm the Program Administrator of Adult Protective Services within the California Department of Social Services. Just for the narrow subset of 4, which is, defines this term in relation to elder abuse, I would say person, adult at risk is still my preference. Although, given the broader context, I do agree with and support person and adult with support needs as the strongest option more generally.
Thank you very much, James, and thanks for being here twice.
Of course.
Okay, Sarah.
Jason Sullivan Halpern.
Hey everybody, Jason Sullivan Halpern from the California Long-Term Care Ombudsman Association. Good to see you again. I'm happy to go after James because I definitely agree with what James just said. I've definitely been thinking about this from the perspective of the statutes that pertain to abuse of older adults and adults with disabilities. And in that context, I like adult at risk, but I do find adult at risk or adult with a vulnerability to still be somewhat stigmatizing, like in the broader context. And so for that reason, I also am gravitating more towards person with support needs.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it.
Okay, Jessica Kramer.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see everybody here. How's my volume?
Very good.
Very good.
Okay, great. So I'm remembering back on our last meeting, and the first thing I want to share is why I can't support person with support needs. I believe in the last meeting that one of the people here explained how they are a dependent adult under the law, but do not have support needs. I know that when my health is poor, I need a lot of support. When I'm having a great moment of health, maybe 1 month a year or so, I really don't need much support, but it doesn't change my being a dependent adult under the definitions. So because we have 2 people on this group who qualify as dependent adults but don't necessarily have support needs, I think that should weigh heavy on this group in making the determination, because it would immediately exclude people from that qualification. And also, I did actually read 85% of the subsections and all of the definitions. And I work very closely with law enforcement on this work and on broadening their purview and understanding of what a dependent adult is to be more inclusive. I couldn't find a single reference that said dependent adult or dependent person needs support or care. So I am a little bit confused why we're all leaning into that. And I would love to be educated. I learned so much from the information Steve sent out, including that Adult Protective Services has its own definition that's different. And I had no idea about that. So I'm enlightened by this process. I am leaning into the concept of at risk or vulnerable. But what I don't like about those terms, in terms of it being a perfect solution, is that they're used in those words are used in many other areas of the law. But so I would lean into anything that's in the at-risk or vulnerable category. Bobby, I really like functional limitations. I like that a lot. I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about that. The best one that I came up with was endangered adult or person. And the reason I did that is because it's synonymous with at risk or vulnerable, but it's currently not used. And the context it is used in is describing abuse of dependent adults and dependent persons. And it also gives an immediate feeling of needing to protect that person. And under the law, the legislature has told us that dependent adult and dependent persons require special consideration and special protection under the law. So my current suggestion is endangered adult or endangered person. And I think it would very nicely replace the term in terms of ease, readability, and just fitting right into the code as a replacement term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So very good comment. Really appreciate it. I'm going to throw out, because what you spoke about was also my concern about, even though it was the first choice, person with support need, because it seemed very definite. Now this makes this term even more clunky, but I'll just throw this out for people's consideration because we're going to go around the second time. Would it help to put the word potential before support need? What if it was person/adult with a potential support need? It's very vague, clearly, but we've talked about how that's actually in some ways a good thing, because people will read it and say, what does this mean? And there will be alerted to the fact that they need to find a definition for the term. And once you have the definition, now the term doesn't really matter if you know to go to look at the because the definition is going to control. So I'm not necessarily advocating that. I'm just throwing that term out in the mix. So far, we're almost finished with this first round. We have a number of people saying that they like person with a support need or support needs, a couple talking about at risk, and then your suggestion, endangered person, adult. Now, you'd have to think about also, we haven't really emphasized this, but there's kind of a preference, it seems like, at least in this group, with people first language. So your suggestion, the endangered adult/person, would not fit that model, and you'd have to come up with a way, if you wanted to mention it, talk about a person with something, or person, somehow you'd have to do that, and it might be difficult to do it. But we're going to have a second round now. We still have close to half an hour. I think we have a couple more people. I see Young is not yet been asked, and thank you very much for being here. You might be the last one who hasn't talked. I'm not sure, but
I think that's right.
So Young, we'll welcome and thank you very much for being here, and give us your first thoughts, and then we'll go around again, and we'll see what people think about what everybody else had to say.
Hi, everybody. My name is Young Pham. I'm sitting in for Adiyinka Glover. We're from Disability Rights California. I've been catching up with the notes, some of the information that was shared. I appreciate that we're moving away from the disability tie-in for sure. I want to say in some way, I feel that the at-risk portion the at-risk suggestions may fall into that more of a stigmatizing bucket for me. I could probably find a new replacement term for every one of those sections under the law, so I'm trying to think globally, which is, I think, that the difficult task for this task force. I support the people first suggestions, person and adults with support needs. Personally, I like persons, but I also understand that in some parts of the Welfare Institutions Code, there is a age boundary. So maybe that speaks in favor of going with the adult, to make clear that we're dealing with a certain age limit. The reason I'm not a huge fan of the at-risk is because also under the Welfare Institute, there are categories in the definitions where this individual, a qualified individual, is, for example, admitted to an inpatient 24-hour facility, right? So you're not necessarily at risk when you're there. You're just you're just considered under this category by virtue of having been admitted, but you could be in there for something that may not necessarily be something that, you know, quote unquote, puts you at the risk. So some more thinking about that. To answer your question, Steve, about the eligibility word, I love the intent. I think eligibility denotes that there's some sort of process that the individual had to go through. So while I really love the thinking, I think it may create more questions about, well, what is this eligibility factor? Is there criteria? Is there another legal standard that's been applied? So for all those reasons, I support others' choice of adult with support needs.
And I'll just ask, because I'll probably ask everyone else too. And again, I'm not advocating it, but the notion of saying potential support need as opposed to support need.
I think that's fine with me. That I don't have any issue with that one.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So we should just go around again now and give everybody a second shot here. Comments on and in particular, you know, if you what we're really looking for here is for people to offer their thoughts about why someone else's suggestion would be problematic. You don't need to, again, repeat your own preference. But if you know, you can, but that's not, you don't need to necessarily argue for it as much as we're looking to make sure that, or see if someone else's suggested term has some hidden issue that no one has thought about and needs to be pointed out. So as best as you can, Sarah, try to go around again. And
Sure. I do note that Greg has his hand up.
Okay, Greg.
Let
me just say one thing here, Greg. Just let me say one thing. So my clock says we have 22 minutes. I don't know. I don't know if the meeting will. I mean, people can stay. I don't know. Does our meeting, Sarah? Does the meeting just go away after an hour, or?
No, I believe we can stay on. Yeah.
Okay, but some people may need to leave, so we need to be cognizant of the amount of time. Okay, Greg, go.
Okay. Listen to everyone's comments. I share the concern about support needs being either too broad or too narrow, that someone reading it might think they know what it means. Saying potential might help. Actually, I like endangered best. I don't think it necessarily has to be people first language. One way to make it clear in the definition that you need to look beyond just the term. I'm sorry, in the term. Let me start over again. One way to make it clear in the term that would make it clear that anybody reading it needs to look just beyond the term, can't stop with, oh, I know what that means, is to be very specific.
You're losing your sound, Greg. Sorry.
Such as using the word specified. The specified support needs, or support specified endangerment, or something that will make it clear. Anybody reading that will say, okay, what does the definition say? What does it specify? But of all the suggestions I've heard, the one endangered is the one I like the best.
Okay, thank you. And I will also offer this, you know, that when the commission makes a recommendation, of course, the legislature is free to accept as much or as little of the recommendation as they want. But there are ways to make a term like clearly marked as being a defined term, which are occasionally used in legislature. You can put quotation marks around the term, which is a signal that this is a defined term. You also can have a tag at the end of it that says, you know, adult with blah, 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 comma, as defined in section blah, blah, blah. And then clearly that's telling anybody who reads the code section that there is a definition that you need to go look at. It's a little, you know, it's a little verbose, and, you know, I imagine the legislature doesn't like to do it all the time because there's a bunch of terms already in code sections that are defined terms, and it doesn't have that tagline. But it might be something that we can offer in this particular case, explain to the legislature that it's really important. This term is used a lot, and it's really important that people understand that this is not kind of a generic term that means whatever you want to argue it means, that there is a specific definition. So that's something that the commission might consider in its recommendation. I, of course, don't know what the commission will ultimately recommend, but that would be a possibility as a way to make sure that the term is not misunderstood. Okay.
Can I just respond to that? That I think under existing law, the terms, the definitions, the term is in quotes. Adults, or people, persons, and so that we would leave those quotes as those quotation marks. We just change the words that are within the quotation marks. And if there's, I think at some point somebody's going to have to go through every single one of those 100 and how many sections and see, make sure that it's neither too broad or too narrow. In most cases, we won't need to say as defined in so and so, because that's already there. We're taking the definition and it's already there and saying here are the words that it defines. So and I like endangered best, but maybe specified endangerment or something.
Okay, thank you. Sarah.
Sure. Christy Sepulveda Burchett.
Yeah, the support needs person or adult with a support needs still appeals to me. Nothing's changed. And I think adding potential makes it really clunky. I wouldn't recommend that. And like I said, the definition can go into what that means. So I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nicole Adler.
I am not in danger. I am a person first. I have support needs, and they are not potential. That is why I am conserved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nina Spiegelman.
Thanks. Yeah, I still am with a person, adult with support needs. If we have to, I totally get why that need maybe to have potential in there. If that's necessary, that's okay. But I know a lot of our folks would have a problem with endangered, at risk, all that stuff. So I'm definitely sticking with that. And then Steve, whatever. I think, again, I'm not really clear on the latitude that the commission has or what the commission would be able to do. But if, there's ever either like some kind of clarifying definition that can be developed, a lot of these concerns, I think, could be addressed in that. But for now, person adult with support needs is my first vote.
Thank you.
Okay, I know Young has his hand raised.
Yep, just again, supporting the Nina, Nicole, and others in the people first approach and using the support needs. Again, I am I want to move away from kind of having a stigmatizing tag to this definition. As we've Steve, you mentioned many times, the definitions will control in the subsections under those sections under the definition section. So I don't think necessarily there's a need to point a researcher or a reader of the statute into the direction of a definition. So by using, for example, specified, again, I think it just adds more clunkiness. Statutory language is not very beautiful as it is. So I think, keeping it as broad as possible in order to cover all these different statutes is the way to go.
Thank you.
Okay, Regina Brink.
Okay, so first of all, I am totally blind myself, and so I would fit into this category. So there's not only 2 people in this working group, I also would be classified under this category because my blindness is total and I have support needs in regards to print and things. But I am not in danger. I am not at risk necessarily sitting in my home where I control my environment. Of course, if I trust someone and they want to take some printed documents and tell me they say one thing that they don't say, there are now technologies and things I can use to check them or have second eyes on it. There's all kinds of things. So to say someone is at risk or vulnerable, I think still retains that same idea about dependence. And so I think, first of all, as a person with a disability, person first language is paramount to me and to most people in our community. The other thing to think about is a lot of people that lose their vision are not or are losing it because sometimes it's a slow process. They don't want to be necessarily attached to a word like dependent or vulnerable, but might admit that they have support needs. And I think it would also help in that category of people disclosing that they have trouble reading a page because it's in small print or they need contrast or whatever it is, right? And so, and print isn't our only disability. Navigation can be a challenge for many reasons. So I think support needs is broad enough because someone with using a mobility aid like a wheelchair would not have the same support needs as I would. They could obviously read print and they could obviously, right, if they have sight, they could obviously do many things that I would need support to do. So if we could think of it in those terms, it is clunky to say potential, but if we needed to go with that, I would be fine. But I just think I'm really, really opposed to endanger, vulnerable, at risk. This is the stigma we are trying to avoid. I do theater and we were putting on a play and it was totally blind and low vision actors. And I'm the director who is also blind. The only sighted person in the production that was fully sighted was doing the lights. And they came up and said, I just think that this was so traumatic to watch because I was afraid you guys were going to fall at any minute. That's what we're trying to get away from. We knew the stage, we were not going to fall. And it was a pretty level stage, by the way, no stairs. So why we were going to fall on a flat surface, I had no idea. And this is what we're trying to get away from. So I would appeal to people that do not have a disability to put yourself in the place of someone who has held jobs, raised children, has 2 degrees, and has a professional resume and still is being told they're endangered, at risk, vulnerable, dependent, and all that stuff.
Thank you very much, Regina.
Vivian Mbaku.
Yeah, I still agree. I think support needs is the more appropriate term. I just everyone's talking about the person-centeredness of the terms really resonates with me. I don't like endangered for all the reasons that have been mentioned. And I think that there's probably no perfect term, but of the options that we've come up with, I think this is the best option that we have so far.
Thank you.
Okay, Bobby Dutta.
Yeah, I'm in a quandary. I just don't have any better idea than what's already been presented. But I am generally not inclined to look at favorably things that, creates a automatic perception that you need something, that you need sport needs or whatever because of the cliche and how people think, lack of a better word, the prejudice that associated with neediness is what stops me from wholeheartedly favoring this option. Other than that, I just don't have any better ideas. I'm all out of ideas.
Right. Well, thank you, Bobby. You've been a good contributor though already, so thank you.
Okay. Carmen Ruiz Ochoa.
Yes, I continue to be in support of people first language, and as Young shared, moving away from stigmatizing tags and really centering adults, person with support needs.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Flores.
Yes, I still am in agreement with person/adult with support needs. I feel like that is the least stigmatizing phrase. And in my opinion, I feel like some of the other suggestions, like endangered adult, can sound a little bit harsh.
What about the potential? The people have some people have talked about it, some people have not. Thoughts about that, adding that to potential support needs rather than support needs.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a strong opinion on adding potential. I think I don't really have a strong opinion on adding it versus leaving it out. I think though, if I were to lean more towards one over the other, I would say not adding potential.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, James Treggiari.
Hi, so just purely in the abuse context, I just want to reflect with APS that it's a two-part definition. So when we talk about dependent adult in APS, we're talking about a person with a disability who is in a situation that puts them in the way of harm, imminent harm that they don't have the ability to counteract, to resolve on their own. So I think what's hard about this conversation is that we have so many different ways that definition gets used. And so that is all a way to say, just very narrowly in the abuse context, I would still be in favor of endangered, at risk. And that is not to dismiss the concerns of person-centered language. I absolutely agree and support that. But if you look carefully at Section 4, what it's talking about is a person with a disability and makes that definition. So it's not defining the person, it's the person plus the situation makes them that. So a person, I think, as came up in the first meeting, a person with a disability does not automatically qualify for APS services. Now, that could be a subject for future conversation, whether persons with disability should automatically qualify for APS, but under the current definition, that's just not true. So for that very narrow context, for the rest of the definitions, I would absolutely defer to the group, but that just remains my concern in that abuse context.
So James, so the term then that you're saying, just if there was a way to separate out those terms as defined for APS purposes, you would be still with person at risk, or that's what I had down for the last one.
Yeah, or I did like endangered. And then again, when you read the definition, it's a person with a disability is part A, and part B is that they are unable to protect their own needs. So it's not a designation simply of the person, it's the person plus the situation creates APS eligibility.
Okay.
So it could be, for example, it would be like a person with support needs could be the way I say it, and their need for support has made them unable to protect themselves from abuse. So there's an and statement there that I think in other definitions around the code aren't present, which makes it a tricky conversation for me.
Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful.
Okay, Jason Sullivan Halpern.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that point, James, and that's sort of along the same lines of what I was thinking, is that I know the goal here would be to ideally we'd have one term that would apply to all of these different situations, but I do think in the abuse and neglect context, vulnerable or at risk makes sense. I don't like endangered because I think it presupposes a lot in that context. I think there's, when we're encouraging people to report abuse and neglect, it's often just based on a suspicion that there's abuse and neglect. We don't want to make people feel like there's a certain level of certainty that they need to do something like that. And I feel like that becomes a loaded term in that context. So I am definitely in favor of maybe having person with support needs being the overarching term, but then if there is a way to hone in even, you know, a little bit more in the abuse and neglect context, I think that would be valuable for people who are really paying attention to those sections of the code. But I definitely think, you know, when we look back at what we're trying to change, dependent adult is very negative. And I think, you know, I even think at risk or vulnerable seems to focus more on the negative, but I think endangered to me seems more more certain than it needs to be.
Okay, thank you very much.
I recognize that Young and Vivian have their hands raised, but we do have one more speaker left for the second round, Jessica Kramer. Steve, how would you like to handle that?
Yeah, let's Jessica, please. First, Jessica.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. So I can tell that there's a lot of triggerability in this meeting, and I would just like to ask people who feel triggered when I speak to please understand that the position that I'm coming from is really a law enforcement perspective. I know that every person in this group wants more people to be included in the protections afforded by the state for what we currently define as dependent adults and dependent persons. I really represent invisible disabilities, and my community is often left out of protections by law enforcement because we are not under a conservatorship, or we are not in a 24-hour care facility, not an acute hospital, but like a other type of 24-hour facility. I hope I'm being clear here, but people with invisible disabilities tend to be not included in the protections for dependent adults and dependent persons. And so really where I'm coming from is not to discount person first. I'm not trying to be offensive, but I'm really trying to bring an element of how is law enforcement going to do a better job of including more people, especially people with invisible disabilities who live independently, in these protections so that they can live safer lives when it comes to abuse. And so please just try to understand that that's where I'm coming from, and give me a little grace on that. So because people with invisible disabilities who live independently tend not to be included by law enforcement in these protections, that community that I represent, we cannot go with support needs, because we need to get away from law enforcement expecting us to be under a conservatorship or under the care and custody of somebody. And if law enforcement then is trying to ask us, well, what support needs do you have? And you have to prove you have support needs. I'm really just earnestly sharing with you guys that law enforcement is not going to do a good job with this. We really need to broaden it. Part of it was offensive language, but part of it was misleading language around people living independently. So I'm totally okay with the shutdown on endangered. I'm totally okay with moving person first, but my community can't do support needs because nowhere is that listed in any of the sections or any of the definitions, and it would continue to exclude people with invisible disabilities who live independently. So I'm going to still lean into, I can tell at risk, vulnerable, and endangered are not going to fly with most of the group. So I really want to lean back into Bobby, which is adult or person with a functional limitation.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm taking careful notes here. Okay, back to the hands, I guess.
Okay, Young Pham.
You're muted.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thanks, Jessica. You raised a really good point. I too am a person with an invisible disability, and I think I kind of fall back on the suggestions that, you know, some of these definition can be, or some of these, this term can be flushed out and tailored to a particular statute through the definition section. So that's kind of how I see the middle ground on this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vivian Mbaku.
Thanks. I have to hop off after this, but I wanted to highlight what Jim and Jason mentioned. I think that potentially, I think part of the recommendation could be a carve out for APS that doesn't, so that this change in term doesn't impact the meaning of the, like, I'm not 100% sure that I like the idea of the support person term, but or excuse me, support with supports term, but I'm not sure that that is going to not impact the APS statute. So in my head, it's like maybe there's a recommendation where we change the term in other statutes, but keep the term the same or find something different specifically for the APS statute, because I do have concerns about that being specifically impacted. And I think what Jim brought up is really important. So I'm not sure how that would work, but that's I know the idea is to find one term, but I don't know if there's one term that's really going to encompass everything and actually have the correct intent.
Okay, thank you very much, Vivian.
Okay, Greg DeGiro's next was next.
I'm definitely swayed to not use terms like endangered, which I had liked, which I do see now as stigmatizing. I'm also swayed though by Jessica's concern about law enforcement, which is what I deal with, and saying support needs, even if we say potential support needs, is not cover the what the actual definition says. So I'm leaning now towards functional limitations. I do think saying you're concerned about that the person may not have functional limitations at present, so adding potential would be useful. But then I'm also swayed by the argument that there are those who are not potential, they're actual. So my vote at this point would be actual or potential functional limitations. I know that's a little clunky, but the law is full of clunky things, and I don't think it matters. And I do think we're going to have to go through the APS definition and, frankly, every other definition in code to make sure that it's that whatever general term we come up with covers that, and is neither too broad or too narrow for that. APS may be one of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg.
Regina Brink.
Okay, so one of my roles with the California Council of the Blind is the Director of Governmental Affairs, which means I head up a lot of our legislation. And I will tell you a couple of things. First of all, when a term is agreed upon, like I'm just going to use dependent adult. When dependent adult is agreed upon, it is generally used wherever it is now, and it has a definition. And what I understand we are supposed to do is to replace that term, not to change the definition. So the definitions, if I'm correct, under dependent adult would remain the same. And so the term is created to respect persons with disabilities, not to change the law, not to change the definition of this category, if that's clearer. And I think what we're trying to do is make the term define everything, which it can't and it won't, because our language is not perfect. And legislative language itself can be very murky and clunky and all the things that have been said. So what I also want to point out is no word or set of words is going to actually change the way a whole group of people is treated, say in law enforcement. It won't work. It doesn't matter what term we put to it. It's the definitions and the legal parameters around what you can do and can't do with a certain community. It's also about training and awareness. And law enforcement will not change until people with disabilities are allowed to go in and train law enforcement so that they can deal with people who are in that category. And just for the record, I live independently. I do not have a caretaker, a caregiver, or anything like that. And most of the people who are blind or low vision in our both groups, the National Federation of the Blind and the California Council of the Blind, are also living independently. So there's a lot of people with disabilities that live independently. Secondly, a lot of people that are blind legally under the definition, they have low vision and they have quite a bit of usable vision, and they don't carry a cane nor use a dog guide. And so you will not know who they are. They are invisible. So a quite sizable number of our population is invisible as well. And the reason being is they don't want to claim that. But at certain points, they're going to need support. And that support, again, they can't fill out a paper form. They just can't do it if it's in regular print. So that's my comments. And please think about this, not in terms of being a magic fix for everything that we want to fix. I often run into that in my own community where people are like, well, this bill should do this, it should do that. We can't have something that does everything.
Okay. So, Nicole, last hand.
No. I do not have a functional limitation. Society puts that label on me. I am capable. I agree about training law enforcement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, I said earlier that maybe this would be the last meeting, but I don't think so now. I think that we still have some issues here which are outstanding, and I need to summarize this and send out more email and perhaps focus us a little further, and maybe do a little more research myself on various possibilities that have been suggested. So I'm thinking, I mean, you'll get a notice one way or another. Either, the staff has decided or the commission has decided they want to just go ahead and make a recommendation based on the input that's been very valuable for sure from this group, or another meeting, and we'll hopefully set it up so that as many people as possible can attend, and I will try to sort of continue the focus based on issues that have been raised here today and were raised in the first meeting. Still a fair amount to think about. I'm sorry, I'm seeing a hand up. I'm seeing Christy has a hand up, and
just a general question.
Sure.
So what are we looking for here? Are we looking for 100% consensus? Because what I heard was a lot of consensus on one term. So just what we're looking for here.
I would say that we're not looking for 100%. I doubt we're going to get 100%. At least what I'm looking for, and I guess the staff will talk it over. I'm looking for the ability to report to the commission where this group stands. And so that could be, a majority of the group prefer this term, but these objections have been raised to that term. And commission, you need to think about what you think about those objections and what you want to do about that. Maybe we can do some more work here, and there's a way to, like when I suggested the word potential right at this meeting for the first time, the idea was, okay, this is sort of addressing what somebody was saying about not having a support need. You know, and we got some comment on that. And so now we've had other comment, which raises some other issues. So maybe there's something else that can be offered. I think we're getting close. I would think one more meeting and then we're probably going to call it. And we'll just report to the commission, you know, what the summary is of everything that has been said by this working group. But to me, that's the way a working group works. I mean, we're never going to get like, okay, we're all in favor, unanimous vote is required for this. So, you know, and the staff is just reporting to the commission. So the commission, they make the decision themselves in terms of what they recommend to the legislature. So the staff's role is to give them as much information as possible from this working group. So that's the answer to your question, I hope. Okay. Sharon. Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Well, first, I want to thank everybody for their participation. This has just been so enlightening and informative. So the commission is going to benefit greatly from your input. But I just wanted to chime in and remind everybody that even when the last meeting of the working group occurs, the commission process is very open and transparent. And so there will be plenty of opportunity for folks to attend commission meetings when this is discussed and make public comment. Of course, written public comment is also very welcome. So just wanted to put that as a reminder that we will continue to receive your input throughout the process. And thank you again so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. And I will add also, just in terms of sort of nuts and bolts of the commission process, you know, I'm going to send emails to everybody explaining where we are. And if it was no more meetings, I'll be explaining that. But eventually there'll be a memorandum that staff will submit to the commission, and that's a public document, and that will be on our website. And it's submitted, you know, approximately 10 days before the commission meeting. And you will see what the staff is recommending. And that's also an opportunity there to, in other words, you don't have to wait to see, you know, what's discussed at the meeting. You know, you can comment on the memorandum as well. So just, you know, just so you know what's coming down the road, but I will do my best to keep everybody informed even before we get to that point. Okay, so thank you all very much for coming. I'm seeing no more hands, so really appreciate it. We went over just a little bit, and I look forward hopefully to seeing everybody again, but absolutely thank you very much for all your contributions so far, and bye-bye.
Oh, there's one more hand from Jason.
That was a mistake. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye.